Welcome to Strip Cover Lit. I'm Dalton Gentry, and it is Friday, so we are here with episode number 9 of How to Read Books Good, a breakdown and analysis of each chapter of How to Read Literature Like a Professor by Thomas C. Foster, and today we are focusing on chapter 9. It's more than just rain or snow. Now, we talked a little bit last week, the little prelude to this here episode. What is this going to mean? I said probably we're talking about symbolism. The symbolism of the rain, the symbolism of the snow, and for the most part, that's pretty on track here. Weather plays an important part in literature and is always there for a reason. Now, Thomas Foster introduces this in the text by saying the cliche, "It was a dark and stormy night," which everyone's heard before, and at one point in time was used originally, but now it's become a cliche. And the reason for that cliche, though, is acceptable, because "it is a dark and stormy night" sets the tone for the piece. That's that first bit that we're getting here, and it is a bit that utilizes the weather. It utilizes the rain to let you know what the scene is kind of setting itself for, what you're getting into with this. From page 70 of How to Read Literature Like a Professor, if I may. Weather is never just weather. It's never just rain. And that goes for snow, sun, warmth, cold, and probably sleet, although the incidence of sleet in my reading is too rare to generalize. So we get a bit of a hint here that anytime we have weather mentioned in a book, it's going to be there for a reason. It's going to be setting up the novel. It's going to be telling us something about the character's transformation. That rain and snow is not just there to look pretty. It's there to serve a purpose. Excuse me. It's like the 1950s at this point. You're talking about a class, you're teaching a little bit about literature, you have to have your coffee with you. Anyway, rain can mean a number of things in literature, and there is really no limitations that you can place on this here, because if you can somehow utilize rain as a tool, you could really utilize it for any means. But there are a few here that Thomas Foster does point out for us here that you might be able to keep an eye out for. First of all, rain as a plot device from page 71 here. Now that's going to be your dark and stormy night. Maybe the inhabitants of whatever manor. This seems to be very Victorian horror when you say dark and stormy night. They're inside because it is indeed a dark and stormy night. The rain is preventing them from leaving the area. And that's something we have to take into account is throughout literature, especially when we're looking at classic texts, rain meant something different. If it rains today, I'm pissed off. I'm going to be wet getting to my car, but I'm going to dry off. It's really not that big a deal. If it rained 200 years ago, it's a big deal. If you get too wet, you might not get warm. You have the possibility of hypothermia setting in. It's really hard to move those horses through the mud. It's not going to be a convenient thing. So rain is definitely much more significant as we move back in literature, but it can still be used as a signifier today for a number of different things. Because if a character is wet, he feels dampened down, he feels burdened, it becomes much more of a stress. Rain oftentimes will bring characters together, because if we're trying to get out of the rain, you never know who you might see. That brings us to number 2. Second, atmospherics. Rain can be more mysterious, murkier, more isolating than most other weather conditions. Rain always has this dark ambiance just kind of floating above it here. And Thomas Foster actually kind of argues this a little bit. A main point that he makes here actually in this chapter is the Judeo-Christian belief of Noah. God sent the rains to create this flood and destroyed all of Earth, destroyed all of humanity, but promised never to do it again, gave us the rainbow. That's kind of another little significant thing we can look at there, because that rainbow is God's promise that he will never flood the earth again. How magical. But regardless, rain is that mysterious, isolating thing. It is something that is going to be a bit of a threat in literature. It sets that scene, and it kind of gives you that feeling of, well, maybe things aren't going to go exactly as planned here. The third and final that he gives us here is the democratic element of rain. Rain falls on the just and unjust alike. So this is more of a character bonding moment. You may have two characters from different spectrums of the world here, different socioeconomic classes, maybe different moral backgrounds. Regardless, you're going to get rained on all the same. Rain is an equalizer. It does not care who you are. It is going to pelt you regardless. So there's a lot of things that rain can be doing here. Rain also is not just surface level. It can be cleansing. It can be purifying. Now, I've rambled on a bit about how rain it dampens the character down, it creates a burden, but ironies are a big thing in literature. Rain can also do the opposite. One of the paradoxes of rain is how clean it is coming down and how much mud it can make when it lands. So if you want a character to be cleansed symbolically, let him walk through the rain to get somewhere. Moving on to page 72, there's this little blurb here. That stain that was upon him, figuratively, can be removed. So rain, in essence, is water, and water in literature is a cleansing, purifying tool. So, when you take away that dark ambiance from rain, when you take away that dark and stormy night moniker, that rain can mean the exact opposite. If you have seen, and I'm sure you have, if not, turn on the television, it's on right now, always is, The Shawshank Redemption. Andy Dufresne crawled through a river of shit and came out clean on the other side. That iconic moment when Andy has crawled through the pipes, crawled through the tunnels, and made it outside of Shawshank. And you get this wonderful film moment where he rips his prison grays off and throws himself to the sky and just gets downpoured on. He's pure. He is cleansed. The years of his unjust imprisonment within Shawshank are washed away. He's washing away his sins. So rain can be used as a bit of an ironic tool as well. It does not always have to mean, something bad is happening. Rain can be that moment where your character comes together, culminates, and becomes pure again. So you always have to be on the lookout here and look at the context in which the weather is being used, because it could lead you to a number of different conclusions, whether good or bad. Next up here, what does rain do on a base level? From page 72 of How to Read Literature Like a Professor, rain can bring the world back to life, new growth, to the return of the green world. So again, we're having a moment here that the rain may be ominous, it may be pelting you, it may be weighing your characters down, but in the end, that rain is necessary. The rain is what brings new life. It's what brings us out of the winter into the spring season. We get those April showers and then our May flowers. It rejuvenates the world around us. And again, I like my film references because they're very easy to sling here. Let's look at The Lion King. Just came out, remade in theaters. That ending scene, what happens? The rains come, wash away the fires, and then shortly thereafter, we're back to a new green Pride Rock. Everything is fine again. The rains have come. The rains have granted our blessings and have washed away all the evil that has been plaguing our area here, and has again brought us back to a world of balance. So rain can do great things. Rain can do bad things here. But let's not just talk about rain. A brief moment here. Snow and fog are often mentioned as well. And again, we have to just look at the baseline things, what these do. Fog makes things a little muddle. It makes things hard to understand, hard to see. We get this with Emily Dickinson a lot when she's talking about miasma. That is that metaphorical and theoretical fog of the mind that kind of confuses the character and befuddles them. So maybe you want to have, a little bit of a confusing situation for a character. Maybe we want to play with some words a little bit. Throw out some fog. Make things a little harder to see and therefore harder to understand. Snow... No Robert Frost, please, I'm over it. But snow is something that is very similar to rain, but it does accumulate. It burdens the land. It buries you in. It is much more confining than rain, and also much more dangerous. Snow is cold. Cold is bad, especially when we're looking back to classic texts again. Snow could be life or death. So that is something you have to take into account here. But again, with that purifying, the opposite side of the spectrum, snow's a really pretty thing. That silence that you get from the snow, it's very peaceful, it's very harmonious. So you could be playing with a number of different things here. But regardless, the weather that you are implementing in the story, or the weather that the author is implementing in the story, is going to be there for a purpose. And we talked a little bit about the weather, we talked a little bit about ironies, but where can we see this in literature with some examples of books that we have reviewed here on Strip Cover Lit? First and foremost, As I Lay Dying by Faulkner, we have the moment where they must cross the ford, and the ford has been flooded due to the torrential downpours of rain. Therefore, it brings our characters together. It forces them all to cooperate, work as one unit in order to successfully cross the ford. Now, Faulkner is a goddamn genius because that crossing also tears our characters apart. That burden of having to travel through the flooded landscape makes things a lot more difficult. It does cause a lot of issues for our characters, and therefore, while it brings them together, it pulls them further apart, which is absolutely gorgeous, and one of the reasons Faulkner is one of my favorite authors now. Next up here, San Miguel by T.C. Boyle. T.C. Boyle, a genius, by the way, very interesting man, and somebody that I'd love to do a little bit of more work on the channel with here. In San Miguel, the rains are constantly plaguing this island which is inhabited by only 2 people. We get that, again, biblical Noah sense here where, the rains are pelting down, it's ruining the landscape, and it's these people trying to survive again. They're trying to make it through this rainy season so that life can begin anew. And again, we get examples here where the rain is much more than it is today. That rain makes things difficult for them. It threatens their life many times, and therefore plays a hugely significant factor in the novel itself. So, is it more than just rain or snow? Absolutely. If rain or snow is being implemented in your text, it is there for a reason, and you should definitely look in to see what that reason is to get a little bit more from the author. Now, next week here on Strip Cover Lit, we will be continuing forward with How to Read Books Good, a full breakdown of How to Read Literature Like a Professor by Thomas C. Foster. And next week, Chapter 10, Never Stand Next to the Hero. So we're going to see where that takes us. If you like this kind of thing, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. Give this video a like as well. It's something I try to do every single Friday here on Strip Cover Lit. And if you want to help us create more great content like this, there's a link, as always, to our new and updated Patreon to be found in the description below.